Hi, and welcome to my very late night show tonight. Completely forgot I was supposed to be doing this, and just want to make sure I do. I'm still keeping up my 30-day program, and here we are on what is it, day 20. Been working today on. I've been invited to speak at another TED Talk. It's not going to get published, not going to get videoed, unfortunately, but it is really a good opportunity because it's a big in-house international TED Talk that's going to be going out to all of the Fidelity investment companies, branches all over the world. So it's going to be a really interesting event to do. It's going to be at the end of October, but like most TED Talks, you've got to prepare a lot well in advance. So I'm trying to get the final thing together. I've got to video that sometime this weekend and give them an initial draft. And I've been working on what to do. My previous TED Talk was largely about the issue of gender identity and what it's all about. This one I'm looking at taking just a little bit further. A concept that's sort of coming to mind that I'm working with, playing with at the moment, is this whole way in which, from the moment we're born, it's as if we're placed in a gender bubble. Now you've heard of John Gray's Mars and Venus. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and that whole idea that we're literally almost from separate planets. I think the idea is almost as if we live in, men and women live in a sort of almost parallel universes, that we're living together and yet living apart. We are so socialized into this completely different gendered world. It's almost impossible to see what's happening with the other. And I know when I changed gender, it took me, I would reckon, a good 2 years to actually adjust myself into living in female gender, living in the world of women. Everything changes. The whole concept of how we live just changes. If I think if a man and a woman walked down a street, at the end of the street you interviewed them about the experience of walking down that street, you'd probably find that they quite literally, it feels as if they've almost walked down different streets. Hi Daniela, good to see you. And I think this whole idea of and this is what I'm trying to work on with this Fidelity speech, is looking at the way in which we move in totally different worlds. The language is different, our expectations are different, the kind of jobs are different, the type of education we get is different. It's changing. Certainly, when I went to a boys' school for a while, completely segregated from the girls. We weren't even allowed to talk to each other, and even within mixed gender schools, right from the very age, from sort of 5, we're split very dramatically. Boys this side, girls that side, and there are sort of rules about behaviour which are so rigid in the way in which that we grow up. I mean, I think it's fairly obvious. Everybody knows that gender is different, but it's only when you shift from one gender to the other that you begin to become aware of just how different it is. That even body gestures. I remember going to a meeting when I was sort of in the process of changing gender, and somebody said something to me, and I drew my hand to my chest, and they said, "Oh, you can't do that. You men don't do that." And it was because I'd been living partly female and partly, I was swapping backwards and forwards, and it was becoming increasingly difficult, I found, to keep the behaviours different. If I wasn't careful, my behaviours would really draw attention to myself. And I think that's one aspect that people don't understand about being trans, is that the reason we shift so strongly from one into the other is we want to blend in. And if you don't completely adopt the behaviour and lifestyles and language of the other gender, then you will stand out. And that will make it uncomfortable. You'll be treated as different. You'll be, you may be ridiculed, you may be laughed at. And that's the one thing that we're trying to avoid. We hate ridicule. That's the human being's greatest fear. And I'm trying to look around this whole area of what is it about this gender bubble, this world in which we live, where everything we see and hear is completely different, and we're so separated that it's very difficult to move from one to the other. I say it actually is becoming less difficult, because what we're seeing now is this fragmenting of the differences between gender, and this introduction and the growth of people just finding themselves as gender non-binary. And to be honest, I'd probably personally more easily find myself in an area of non-binary. I think the only reason I haven't identified as non-binary is because it was pretty much unknown. It was very much an unknown world. It was like holding myself at the ridicule. I remember my daughter once phoning me and saying, "Dad," she still calls me Dad, "please, when you come to visit, if you come as a man, I can handle that. Come as a woman, I can handle that. But if you come somewhere in between, that is really difficult." Because that's the bit that people they question. Why aren't you one or the other? And it's this breaking down of the binary that we're actually beginning to see. And I'm working around on my speech on how I can actually start to look at what's happening around that, because still I see most trans people want to move from one gender into the other, adjust their body, have surgery, take hormones, and completely change their voice, just try to become the other gender when we're not. I'm a speaker. I have a voice that's quite deep. I made the decision I wasn't going to change that, so that when people hear me speak, they immediately think, "Oh, that sounds odd." And it's the thing that's caused me the most difficulty in my own personal sense, dealing with being on video, dealing with seeing myself and looking at myself and thinking, like, I see masculinity. I'm trying to come to terms of saying, well, actually, okay, of course there's masculinity there. I spent 50 years living as a man, and my voice is a male voice. And I can change it, I can modify it slightly, but why should I? Why should I have to change myself to adopt to some social standard, unwritten standard that says this is what you've got to do if you're a man, this is what you've got to do if you're a woman, and you can't be in between? So that's the area, and that's the way I'm going. We're just calling it Rethinking Sex and Gender, and the whole area is about looking at the way in which we are so severely pushed into these models of what masculinity and femininity is, the difficulty we face when we don't fit with those rules, and how that is now beginning to change. So that's it for tonight. I just wanted to do a quick online, just to make sure I did complete my everyday going online, which I'm still doing. So I'm going to be off now. It's nearly midnight, and thank you for looking in, Daniela. We'll see you again soon. I'll be back tomorrow. More thoughts and ideas. Back in my little, quite liking doing this, talking in my lounge here, the African looking lounge. I shall look forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. Take care.